Bernard, welcome. Please join me.
Hi.
John, hi. So here we have two CEOs of really interesting companies, both two of the most effective CEOs around, and we're here to talk about the CEO as a transformer. And I think you'll find they both have a lot to say on that, and that their companies also are fascinating. You know, in the case of Kaiser Permanente, which Bernard runs, you know, it's a unique company in the American economy. It's basically in the place that everybody wants to go, to take a holistic view of healthcare. Because John is both Bernard is both a health insurer and a healthcare provider, which allows him to cut through a lot of the inanities of the American healthcare system. And I think you'll hear him talk a little bit about how that works and how different his company is. In fact, a lot of other companies are trying desperately to mimic what he has, including right now with Aetna trying to buy Humana. In a way, what they're trying to assemble is a Kaiser Permanente by just throwing a lot of money at it, and that's interesting. Now, John Chen, a longtime friend of Techonomy and of mine, who's been an advisor and an idea factory, which is what he is as a CEO. CEO of BlackBerry, so the guy's got a lot of nerve because he's CEO of BlackBerry. And he took it on knowing it was a monumental challenge, but he's doing an amazing job. I think everybody, including the shareholders, have acknowledged, and the performance of the stock has acknowledged, that he has had a catalytic impact there. It's still a company people have strong opinions about. Mostly negative overall, he would even see, but a lot of investors are with him on this. But you know, people still think, how could BlackBerry make it at this point? And yet he's doing amazing things. I just want to mention two things that have happened very recently. One is he closed on the purchase of Good Technology, which many of you will remember, you know, was one of the great hopes of the technology industry of mobile at some point, and had quite distinguished and distinctive technology, and still does, but never really got the critical mass in the marketplace that people thought it would. And yet, so he's just closed the deal to buy all those assets and incorporate them into his product set. And the other thing he just did and announced, actually released on Friday, was an Android-based BlackBerry, which is a major shift for him and for BlackBerry. So he still has all the products with the proprietary BlackBerry operating system, but now he has an Android phone that has all the BlackBerry software. Do you have it in your pocket, John?
Oh, no.
Okay, well, it's too bad because, hey, Neelam, you got one?
Neelam has one.
Thank you, Neelam. Okay, John, show us this real fast. I don't know whether
last time I did it on TV,
you don't have to even use it. Just show the keyboard.
I really fumbled.
It's got a built-in keyboard.
Well, it's a 5.4-inch touch screen. This is a Samsung S6 screen, so it's the same screen and it has the latest, all the latest technology and Qualcomm and everything you could think of. And then has BlackBerry, like David said, there's a BlackBerry security on it. We put in privacy dashboard. So, for example, I'll give you a really interesting thing. We were testing this in North Carolina. So, in 2 hours, one of my guys opened up a USA Today apps. USA Today, you know, you're getting the headline news. Our phones start tracking who pings you.
It has security software to tell you how secure is your phone right now. And what did you discover about USA Today?
And then in 2 hours, he was pinged 400 sometimes by USA Today on the location. So you keep asking, where is he, where is he, where is he? And obviously, they want to sell that information to serve you, quote unquote, better, to give you the right information. But just to let you know, this is just a very simple, you would have never expect to get pinged 400 times.
But that software is built into the phone.
We have a detector to tell you USA Today is doing that to you.
Yeah.
Because you left that apps open.
It's got security software that's BlackBerry's that will allow you to drill down and get information about how your security and privacy is being jeopardized right now. That's the kind of thing that BlackBerry built its business on all along.
Right, and like government uses it and stuff. So then we give you the menu options. I mean, this is not, by the way, this panel is not about me selling. So I'm going to stop right now. I'll give you the menu. It will tell you what causes, like in this particular case, at this point, is yellow. And then we actually tell you what was the red part of it and what was the yellow part of it. And you could decide something. For example, on this particular phone right now, the development mode is opened, meaning that people could download code and changes your content, the code stream. So if I locked it, it will improve the security part of it. So this is all that being done. Lots of things coming in the future.
That's great.
In this. But anyway, we're taking order outside.
And it does have, you did see the keyboard, right?
Right.
Yeah, everybody saw that.
Everybody loved the
The
keyboard.
keyboard is quite an interesting component.
And it's context-based, so
Maybe we got to give Neil.
But anyway,
So here's another thing I realized. Yeah, there we go. You know, John has not, you know, the funny thing is the devices aren't even his main strategy at this point. His main strategy at BlackBerry is to be a software company more than a device company, despite the fact that's always the way we thought of BlackBerry. And because he has really good security software, he's done a pretty good job of building up that business, and it could sustain the company on its own potentially. But I was thinking, what draws these two companies together as I was thinking of preparing this, and I think there really is something. As I mentioned before, Kaiser Permanente spans more of its, it actually spans multiple industries, in effect, by definition. And so does BlackBerry, because not only does John sell a device that has his own software on it, but he also controls the network. BlackBerry's always had its own network for its enterprise customers to give them security, which is why governments and the president use BlackBerry as opposed to other networks. So there really is an analogy that both these companies have a broader view, in effect, of the industries in which they operate. And that actually, I don't know, this isn't exactly how I wanted to start, but Bernard, one of the things that's, and we want to talk about the role of the CEO in a lot of this, but one of the things that really was impressive to me when we spoke on the phone was the many ways that you are taking innovations from other industries and incorporating them in Kaiser Permanente. Could you talk about that? It's something that came up on the stage yesterday. Mike Sutcliffe of Accenture Digital said we have to look not in the rear view mirror, but in the side view mirror. Yeah. And you're doing that. How are you doing it?
Yeah, well, good morning, everyone. Part of it is coming to conferences like this and seeing what the latest is, and maybe we can work something out. You know? Yeah, exactly. No, it's grounded in the belief that the healthcare system in this country is fundamentally flawed. With all the greatness, you know, and we do a lot of great things in the industry, the healthcare system has been built on a model of intervention when you're sick. And that's not what life is about. People don't live to get sick. People live to live. And so the philosophy is, inside of Kaiser Permanente, how do we prevent? And how do we help people to, as we say, thrive? And what does it take to partner with people to help them and assist them in living healthy lives and then going out and doing what you do in life? So one of the things that we're working on is, if you step back and look at the way the industry has been set up, it is fundamentally designed where you come to us for everything you need. The doctor's office visit, the hospitalization, prescriptions, you name it. The healthcare industry has been insulated from the realities of the world forever, and so people have been conditioned that they always come to us. We're absolutely turning that upside down, because a lot of healthcare can be distributed out. And with tools and technology like we have today, one example in Kaiser Permanente, we do secure e-visits. That's a private visit between you and your physician, in which you can email your doc a confidential, secure line and have conversations and go back and forth. Last year we did 21 million of those. 21 million. Wow. All right. This year we're introducing telehealth, in which I can go on my iPad, which, by the way, I have it. I can talk to my doctor now, and there's a visual.
That's not secure.
Exactly. Well, no, we have ours in a special cloud, but we have a secure conversation in which we discuss. More than likely, she wants to look at something, right? And so if you think about, for example, the senior population who may have an appointment every week, and some of it is very simply the doctor wants to have a visual look at you. Well, now, with the high definition technology that's available, you can do that. We now have tools that we're working on that provides information to our population on an ongoing basis that gives them ideas and suggestions of what they can do to maintain health. We're in major partnerships with other innovative companies that are looking at new state-of-the-art technology that over time will, for example, there's a little pebble that can go into a pill and that can monitor how the pill is distributed throughout your body, and then it flushes out like with nature. You get the picture. And so these kind of things now are in the forefront of how we think about total health as opposed to health care that happens when you are sick.
And you have more incentive to think that way because you're both the insurer and the provider.
Well, and we take total responsibility for the person's health, right?
Yeah.
So we're not just a hospital system, which means when you're in my lane of being in the hospital, I do everything, but then you go out. We take care of the entire spectrum of care for the 10.2 million people who now belongs to Kaiser Permanente. But
quickly just talk about, there are three things, I'll quickly mention if you want, but the things you've taken from other industries. One was the check-in, the fast lane, and the tracking of the patients. All three of those were things you analogized to other industries.
Yeah, I mean, so just right quick on the emergency department is for true emergencies. We all know in the industry, emergency department is more than that. Emergency department, true emergencies in a typical hospital system in this country is like 3%, 4%. So
of what the emergency room does?
Of what the emergency room was ever intended for, meaning true emergency, gunshots, stabs, heart attacks, etc. That makes up about maybe 5 to 8% of the volume. The other 90-something% are people who are walking in to get just regular care that either couldn't get it at a doctor's office or uninsured or underinsured, and this is the episodic place to go. What has typically happened is if you go in and you have the sniffles or you have the flu or something, you are prioritized as a low priority on the scale of escalating from a true emergency to urgent care. And so you could wait in the ER for a couple hours to be seen by a physician. We turned that upside down. We said, okay, let's treat this now, ultimately, like what happens in grocery stores, that there's a 15 items or less, or 10 items or less, or 3 items or less. So we say, now you show up in our emergency department, you have a slight cut. You don't have to wait. There's an urgent care line in which there's a doctor available to take care of all those type of patients. So now you get into the fast track and you register, and members in the community are saying they love it because they can get in and out within an hour. And so instead of waiting for a couple hours, you can go down that fast track. Check-ins. We're now experimenting with kiosk systems, and now we're going to telephone check-ins pretty soon, where 24 hours before your appointment, you can register, you can sign up, you can pay if you have co-pays, you can do all the things you do as if you were getting ready to get on the airline. So you can cut past the lines and you don't have to be waiting, filling out forms and all that stuff.
Office,
so we took that obviously directly from the airline industry. So those are some examples of just taking things from other industries that are clearly working in the healthcare industry.
Well, so John, I know you can talk about anything, anything you want to talk about is fine, but talk about as a CEO. I mean, I'm sort of back and forth between industries and the CEO thing here. And actually, I see Dan Hesse sitting in the front row over there. We're going to get him on this conversation, whether he likes it or not, because when he was running Sprint, he was one of the highest rated CEOs in the country. But John, you must really like tough challenges. And how does it work? You've been a CEO for probably more than 25 years at Sybase and now BlackBerry. You took a little time off there for a while, but then they drew you back in. What is it about these challenges and being CEO that you like so much?
Well, no, my wife likes me to be a CEO, so I'm not around. But I don't need to elaborate on that. But I think everybody needs to be useful. If I could help, I'd love to do it. I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah. Your training is as an engineer. We were talking, you and Bill Gross both went to Caltech, and you were talking about that last night.
Yeah, right.
But okay, well, that doesn't really
Well,
take me
sorry
where I thought we were going to go. But we'll talk about this thing of speed, because this is one of the key things about this session. And I think what Bernard's talking about is taking innovations faster into Kaiser Permanente than others can do. When you think about speed, you've moved with incredible speed at BlackBerry because you had to.
Right.
How do you do that? How do you do that in an organization?
Well, it's a complex situation, but seriously, I mean, it's like I'm working for Bernard in the emergency room. When you go into a situation like I normally end up, the company's obviously at the verge of going away. This was a brand that I think USA Today or something, or New York Times, and a couple of years ago said that here's a brand, the list of brands that it won't last. It's going to go away this year. And unfortunately, BlackBerry was on it at that time. Fortunately, we just got the same list. This year, we're not on it. So it's good. It's nice that people recognize the fact that we have pulled ourselves out from the edge of death. I think, the one thing you need to do is you need to recognize the fact that you must change. So the path you're on is not working. And if you start with that premise, there are a whole bunch of techniques one could employ, but the decision has to make pretty fast. And you have to assemble a team that really believe in you. And that's where a lot of the leadership part comes in. And you guys all know about turnaround leadership. So there are many books have been written on it. But at the end of the day, it's really about you write down on a ledger. It's like if personally I'm about to go bankrupt. What you do is you take a piece of paper, you put down on the left-hand side all the assets you own, and then on the right-hand side all the liability you have, and then you try to figure out how you match up and come ahead. And it's really literally that. I mean, I usually just come up with balance sheets and say, here are the things that BlackBerry does very, very well. I mean, we either have the technology, have the patent, has deployed it, President Obama uses it, Chancellor Merkel uses it. Then you go to the other side, is that we have no apps, for example. Not enough. And the worst thing is, I meet people all, in the last 2 years, everybody's so nostalgic about BlackBerry. Everybody said I used to have one, and it kind of make, I don't know whether I felt really good or really bad, because one party said I used to have one. Oh, they have to pry it on my hands and so forth. Of course, in 2007, or before that, that's the only one you could have, because there's nobody else. So you must have had one, unless, or you're too young to use a phone then. So that's not comforting. But the word you use, I used to have one, is a very bad word for me. That means you no longer have one. So I have to work on a lot of these stuff. So you need to apply what you do well, and you say, okay, Dan, now you're going to jump ahead one thing. Is that forget about today's market. Okay, everybody wants to fight about smartphone and all that. Yeah, we're in that market. It's more than $1 billion for us a year. The more important thing is, what do you believe that the market beyond looks like? Now, I heard a lot about IoT. I know you folks are very focused on IoT in the future. It's really about endpoint computing, right? Everything you connect at endpoint. So whether you're in a hospital or you're in the ambulance talking to the hospital before the ambulance arrived, everything is about endpoint computing. Then I said, well, what does BlackBerry do well? Security. And the funny thing about it is, I told everybody I met in the last 2 years, I said, we're the most secure phone. Nobody ever argued with me. Nobody even asked the question, why? They said most secure. If they have asked the question, I wouldn't know the answer. So this is one of those con jobs that's really great.
Not that you deny it, of course.
No, of course everybody said, if I said, I'm a very handsome-looking guy, and everybody say, yeah, okay. I mean, I'm not going to argue, why do you think I'm handsome? So I said, fine. So I figure that there's a long list of, I mean, actually I do. I'm just, now people don't ask me, unless you have at least half an hour to speak with me. But I have the answer now. Why?
It is true.
It is true. Technically, it is correct. So anyway, but anyway, so back to this thing. So I have this. So I'm going to apply security. I know I know the future is about endpoint computing. So let's be a winner and a leader in that.
Yeah.
This is where all our connected cars, the IoT. I don't know whether you guys know the Sync 3 that you demonstrated out there is based on our technology. Yeah. And this is why we built a phone. Everybody asks me, why are you building an Android phone? There are about 17,000 of them, and only one company barely make money, called Samsung. And I built it because I believe it really could showcase our security and privacy. It's this one line that we thought of. Security is what I do, privacy is what you get, and that's what I do.
That's a nice line.
Okay, and that's why we built this phone. Anyway, so I could go on.
You know, I just remembered something. I moderated a panel at Davos in 2009, I think, on mobile, and Eric Schmidt was on it. And you know, I was asking.
He uses the BlackBerry.
I was asking. Does he now?
Yeah.
Well,
He has always been.
Here's the thing. So I was asking, how many phones do you have on you? And actually, the guy from China Mobile had 5 phones in his pocket right there. But Eric pulled out an iPhone and a BlackBerry, both of which he had, and he said, what we need to do is glue these together, he said. And then, you know, so he did Android. But you've finally really done that, which is quite interesting. Anyway, you should go look at that video. You could use it in your marketing.
Okay, good.
So Bernard, technology at Kaiser Permanente, how do you think about that? How high a priority is it for you as the CEO to be immersed in what is possible with tech?
It's top of the list, top of mind, something I think about every day, because it ultimately is going to be the infrastructure of how we provide care. So if I was building Kaiser Permanente today versus 70 years ago, 70 years ago, Kaiser Permanente started with a hospital. That was the starting point, right? They built a hospital, if you will, in terms of where care was being provided. If I was building it today, I would start with technology. I would build a technology platform, and then I'll wrap everything else around that. Because it is the connectivity of everything that we do now, and technology is advancing so fast, it's a matter of keeping up, and it's a matter of picking and choosing. We're now building an entire digital platform in Kaiser Permanente. Now, why am I willing to, in essence, take out the landline computer platform and all that and now hardwire the digital? Because everything is going to be about digital going forward. And sooner or later, this little gadget is going to control much of what you do in everyday life.
Yeah.
And so what I don't want in my vision of technology in Kaiser Permanente is I don't want anyone to step out of the 21st century when they are interacting with Kaiser Permanente.
Wow,
And
nice
so
point, yeah.
you are used to going online to check your bank account. I want you to be able to go online to check your health account. You're used to keeping things tracked through technology. I want you to do it that way. We now use technology like this at iPads, iPhones at the bedside. We now have it traveling with you. So healthcare will be traveling with you as opposed to you have to go to its location. The final thing I would say, the other thing that I think about is actually what you were just talking about, which is with the technology comes the enhanced obligation of keeping that information as secure as possible. So I spend as much time worrying about and investing in the privacy and the protection as I do with the advancement of the technology. That is the single most thing that is most important. And I want to talk about brand damage. People are more concerned about their medical information getting into the wrong hands than they are, quite frankly, credit information. You can cut down and you can cut off a credit card. You can't cut off your DNA. You can't cut off who you are. And now, in the healthcare industry, the sophistication of the level of information that is gathered on individual, it requires an even greater obligation to do everything possible to keep that secure.
It's interesting what you say about not asking people to leave the 21st century. You know, we talk a lot in these kinds of conversations about Uber and Airbnb because they sort of symbolize what's happening of kind of insurgents coming from outside the industry and disrupting things. But they also are doing something else, which they're raising expectations for what kind of service you get in anything.
Right.
And it's actually affecting government a lot. It's like, how come I can't interact with government the way I interact with Uber? But you're basically saying you want to make healthcare an experience as much like Uber as it can be.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I think that it's from those other industries that builds certain expectations that then you carry into other environments or other industries. And we're no different than anyone else. I think that what has happened is that for many years, we've been able to represent healthcare as something so special. You know, it's right under being God in some cases, was kind of like the imagery. We do what we do because we're experts and we're doing it to help you. And there are times in which you want that. If you're lying in the emergency room and you are having a heart attack, you want emergent care and you want it the best that it could be and you want the brightest minds working on you. And we have all that. But that's less than 3% of the total population that needs that kind of emergency care. You want to have a system now that is enhancing your ability to live life and contributing in very different ways to help you to stay healthy and to offer to you options of health. And that's really the paradigm shift that's happening in the industry as we think about healthcare.
We had Yaron Toss of Philips Healthcare Informatics on stage before. He said he knows you. And one thing he didn't say that he told me when we were prepping was that in the services that they're building, which they're converting their products into services along these same lines, they go so far as to think they may end up helping get groceries delivered to you. You know, this is the company that used to do the MRI, you know, and they're thinking now about grocery delivery because they're trying to think of what is it you really need. So you are in that same service delivery business now.
Well, you know, we have, to that point, every year we do something like 70 million doctor office visits. Those are physical visits.
70 million.
70, right? Physical visits. And we own 38 hospitals, et cetera. I was meeting with the CEO over at FedEx, and I was learning about how they move packages, logistics. And it dawned on me, I have a major logistical issue in Kaiser Permanente. How do you move 70 million visits in the most efficient way possible where the member is enjoying the experience as opposed to being confused about what office do I go to next? And so that's taking the paradigm of moving a box in 24 hours to how you move people around where you know exactly where they are. Now, if you are going through a surgery, your loved ones, we now have a tracking system where you're waiting in the waiting room. You know every step of the way where your family member is through that surgery procedure. So you're not sitting there wondering for the next 3 hours, what's going on with my husband or my wife.
Anybody who's had a relative in surgery has been through that.
Exactly, yeah. And so that's really bringing technology and bringing the other industry thought process into the healthcare system. No one wants to sit for 3 hours in intense pressure waiting on their loved ones to come out of a very delicate surgery, and you don't know anything until it's over. This now says Mrs. Jones is actually in the operating room. Mrs. Jones is now in recovery. Dr. X will be out to see you in 30 minutes. And so you are informed during the entire process.
Who has a question or a comment for either of these guys? Okay, Mary Lou, please. Could we get the mic up here? Yeah, thank you. Right here. Thank you.
Bernard, I wonder if you could talk about what you're wearing on your right wrist.
She's a technologist.
I'm wearing the jawbone.
That's a jawbone. Oh.
Yeah. I was wearing the jawbone one time with Fitbit on the stage, and he said, "Look, I can get you the same thing. It's even better."
I got a Fitbit here.
And this is obviously about helping people to think about stuff like walking and movement and everything. And I didn't wear it just for the day. I wear it all the time. And I have a goal that I set for how many steps I want to take and all of that. And even looking at this, the technology today is so much better than it was when they first started and when companies first started. And pretty soon, what you're going to end up seeing is the ability to know your vital signs that's going to be no different than your intelligence of knowing what's going on in your automobile.
This is the Internet of Things, by the way, which John mentioned. I mean, do you think about it that way?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody should know certain things about their bodies, right? How's my resting heartbeat? How's my breathing? How's my oxygen? After I eat a meal, what happened to my sugar? Did it go up? How is energy being used? Those are normal things that we don't think about with the body. Well, when you get in your car, you think about how much gas you have. Are the air tires okay? If you hear noise, etc. So sooner or later, you're going to have diagnostics that you can wear that also is going to look cool, that sort of gives you a running indication of what's going on inside. And I predict it will be as normal as when you get into an automobile.
And John will provide the security.
Yeah, but it's going to be, and this is all true, but the problem that the industry is facing right now is, I'll give you an example. In July, we went on stage in New York, and we have our white hat hacking team. In literally like 10 minutes, we hacked into an infusion pump.
Wow.
And the infusion pump, imagine that you're in the hospital bed, and this is where the medical records thing is important. It's not about your data being leaked out. That's a problem itself. But it's about what other people could be able to control the infusion pump to either give you a lot more morphine than you needed remotely, or to shut it off. So you either be in a lot of pain or you be. And so we're not only protecting the and so those are very serious problems. But then that is the future.
Okay, unfortunately, we got a lot of hands and not much time. I did see him, and Steffi, I don't know if we're going to have time for you. And if he has a short comment,
California, Irvine. John, I have a question for you. So I liked what you said about vision and the competencies you have in security. My question is, what was missing in the past? Because it's great to hear about the future, but how did BlackBerry get itself into the mess it got itself into? Like, was it an execution problem? Was it a vision problem?
Yeah, it was a problem of speed of change, the speed of disruption. We were doing so well in 2006, 7, and the beginning of 8. And I think one of our former CEO had famously said, when the first iPhone came out, that it was going to be a toy and not going to last very long. Oh. And this is archived, so I'm not making any. Okay, I think the whole concept. I know originally that's what David wants to talk about, is that how does change come about, and how do you decide when you change. Yesterday I was having a conversation with somebody, and I said, you could blame a lot about our quarterly results driven society in the Wall Street. You could blame about ego, blame about a lot of this stuff. I mean, I think we do need to train the next generation CEO and leadership to ignore what other people think. And now that's going to be very hard. Now we have a system that not allowing you to ignore. When we even nowadays, there's a lot of companies get activisms, people in there that literally disrupt the long term. So I'll give you a very simple example. I know we're out of time, but if I'm doing very, very well financially, those people who drive that business that are doing very, very well wants to keep doing very, very well, but they won't make any changes in the future. And everybody is about disruption. And then so before long, you find yourself missing the step, and you're doing very, very well, become not so well as time progresses. And this is how come they get into trouble. It's a big topic. It's a big subject. We do a lot of thinking and studying. There's a lot of guru that wrote a lot of books about it. But it's a very interesting topic.
So, Dan, please.
From a customer's point of view, I'll add a perspective on that in terms of why, how BlackBerry missed a step. I took the Sprint job last week of 2007, and I was actually on the board of Nokia. Similar situation, which at that time, and which I had to leave when I took the Sprint job. And at that time, Nokia was larger than our next 3 competitors combined. which were Motorola, Samsung, and Sony Ericsson. And number 4, and the company that Nokia was the most concerned about, was BlackBerry, because BlackBerry was growing like a weed, great margins, and what have you. And I think they both more or less missed the same step, and largely because, John, I agree, because of their success, and because both were great in hardware and great in software at the time, text, voice, but what was becoming important, and the iPhone understood, was what people wanted was really great internet browser on the device. It was the browser in the OS. And then Google figured that out and came out with Android. So that's really where both Nokia and BlackBerry missed. And you're right, because I would explain to, as a customer, to BlackBerry at the time, you have to do this. And there was just a hesitancy. And I think arrogance perhaps is too strong a term, but just a belief in their particular way of moving and going. And I think you missed that step. What I like about, John, your comments now is I think now that was a wave, if you will, the browser. Now privacy and security is coming up to the forefront in terms of an important issue, and you guys are out in front, and that's, so I think you're on a very good track, and I'm rooting for you because some of the global things we discussed the last few days, BlackBerry is so important to Canada, just like Nokia was so important to Finland, and it kind of breaks my heart that Nokia isn't as strong as it once was, because it was so important to the economy and the morale, if you will, of that country, and I think the same is true of BlackBerry in Canada, so I'm rooting for you.
Thank you, Dan. Can I make a comment, Dan? Because this is a very interesting comment. I think you'll find it interesting. You know, the leaderships at the time may have ignored it. Maybe we're doing so well, and there might be arrogance. But there could be a long list of things that are probably true in a lot of senses. There is one thing, it's about culture we never talk about in change.
Yeah.
And the reason, I'll give you now the technical reason behind it. If you guys recall, the reason why BlackBerry was so successful, because you could get signal and you could get downloads everywhere in the world. Well, partly because of our network, and partly because we have a technology called compression. And because at the time, the data costs are too high around the world. So the engineers just holding on that as a dear life. Now, when you have compression, that means that we send you 2K block every single time. Well, it's wonderful for data roaming charges for email, but it's terrible for web serving. Web cannot, that's why you guys have the experience in the past that you get about a quarter a page, and then you got another quarter a page, and then you got a quarter a page. That was our blocking mechanism. So now this is where the culture comes in. You know, who have the vision to override both business and engineering? And especially when a company's doing well. Anyway, that's a different topic, a different time.
This was great. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
I love the way both of you think and talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dan, for that, too. So now I want to bring up John Hagel, a longtime friend of Techonomy, to talk about what business can learn from social movements.